Glad you're here, and we will just dive right in and start with the first item, which is going to be the public comment on non-agenda items. And I actually see that we are going to need to restate that what we're doing, in fact, is calling to order our special meeting for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. And it's a little bit after 6 p.m. So we'll go ahead and call that meeting to order, which is going to require, frankly, City Clerk, a roll call to get us started.
Okay, Cumby.
Here.
Okay. Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
And Weaver.
Here. Okay. Thank you very much, City Clerk. Usually when we're having any kind of an actual meeting, we have to have the roll call of members present. Okay, so that gets us going. We'll go ahead and see if there's public comment on non-agenda items. Public comment on non-agenda items. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period for non-agenda items, and we'll go back to business agenda and open it up with consideration of amendments to the operating budget, which will turn over to the Finance Director, Jennifer Wade.
So Mayor, I can read the motion to put it on the floor if you want.
Yeah, I guess we better do the actual motion because we're doing all of these in one group, right? Okay, so we need to bring the item on the floor before we get background, but the City Clerk has a hand up for me. Yes.
Do we still need to do the notice for it first?
For the special meeting? Did we not,
Yeah.
has this meeting not been noticed prior? Yeah, go ahead, read the special meeting notice. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. So notice is hereby given that a special meeting of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. via Zoom for the following purpose: consideration of amendments to the recommended operating budget. This special meeting will be followed by the regularly scheduled work session.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And yeah, Vice Mayor, over to you.
Great. I move to approve the city manager's recommendation for changes to the FY 2023 through FY 2024 budget, reducing the FY 2023 recommended budget by $34,906 and increasing the FY 2024 recommended budget by $83,699.
Second.
A motion and a second by Councilmember Schuster. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. Council, did you all get your updated cover sheet and everything? Okay, great. All right. Director Wade, thank you for being here.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Councilors. We are bringing you the final recommended changes for the fiscal year 23-24 budget this evening. These changes all have a staff origin, as we received no motions to change the budgets from City Councilors. There are 5 changes before you this evening, totaling the amounts that Vice Mayor Pierce summarized in the motion. In the general fund, we're recommending changes of $142,584 in 23 and $91,021 in 2024 for 3 items. The first item is a staff request from the Finance Division. We are recommending that we be allowed to that the council temporarily authorize an additional position, a senior accountant, so that we can retain a departing employee to assist with ERP implementation. I'm not sure if you councilors are aware of what's happened with the finance team in the 2 years since the pandemic began. but we've had almost a full staffing turnover, and the tenure on the team, aside from myself, I would include myself as part of that team still, and Louise Johnson, the employee that was planning to depart, is less than a year, and we are moving into an ERP implementation. And so as we've talked about this project and ways to mitigate the risk, Chief Operating Officer Brown and I really feel like the council approving this temporary authorization allows us to have a little bit of a buffer for things that will go wrong that we're not sure what they are yet, because we know that they will happen. We are already aware of some possible attrition on this team again. And so the council authorizing this additional position for the biennium only really does give us a little bit of backfill so that we can keep this project on schedule, which is really what we want. And so the cost of this decision is $69,524 in fiscal year 2023 and $73,021 in fiscal year 2024. What's unique about this request is it's a person-specific authorization, which means that we are doing this to retain a 9-year employee only. And so if Louise were to decide to depart in the next 2 years, while this authorization was in place, we would not rehire for this position because that would defeat the purpose, which is to have a tenured employee here to assist. The second request comes from the engineering division. The council authorized an additional engineer. They have hired for that position, but because they actually found a licensed professional, that cost a little bit more than the budget team had initially projected. And so we need to increase the budget for $18,000 in each year to deal with the additional salary and the benefit cost, because remember, those benefits are actually quite costly to the city. The final request in the general fund is for fiscal year 2023. And this is to correct a budget team error in the calculation of the reappropriated amount for a capital project. The amount was entered as a positive rather than a negative, and so the rebudget amount did not calculate correctly in our initial budgeted totals. I'd like to note that even though we made this error, had we not detected it, the project would not have been overspent because we manage on a life-to-date basis for projects. This reappropriated amount is simply a budget team calculation, so we have an amount to carry forward. Those are the changes for the general fund. In the specific purpose tax fund, we would like to rescind a correction we asked for in the capital budget motions. Because Director Webb had requested a project schedule change in 2024, we don't appropriate the SPT fund for the biennium. We appropriate it annually. We need to rescind that request, which is going to reduce the budget in 2024 by $115,000. And finally, in the solid waste fund, we are recommending that $107,678 be added for each year of the biennium to correct the debt forecast for an item that we are least purchasing right now that was actually excluded from the initial forecast. So those are the changes from staff that you will be approving this evening or changing as you see fit. And at this time, I would open it up for questions.
You heard that. Have any questions? Oh, echo. Time echo on the microphone. Do we have any questions? No. Director Wade, it looks like everybody understood your explanation and read their paperwork ahead of time, and it all makes sense. And we hope that the staffing situation stays stable for you and the finance team. That sounds like a challenging environment over the last couple of years. I don't think we were aware of that level of turnover.
Honorable Mayor, thank you. And if the council passes this motion, I'd just like to tell you how appreciative I am of your support, because it has been rough. And that request in particular will really help this team.
For what it's worth, Director Wade, I don't think we would have known about it had you not told us, because the performance from the department has been great, which is no doubt largely due to work that you have been doing. Any questions or comments for the director before we go to public comment on this item? Again, asking again, there is none, so we'll go. We'll see if anybody in the attendees wants to ask any questions or say anything. It doesn't look like it, so we'll go back to the council one more time. Nothing's changed there. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on the motion?
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville. Looks like we lost Somerville, so absent.
Excused.
Pierce,
Pierce is a yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 8 yeses, 0 no, and 1 absent.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. All right, that motion carries. That will now bring us to the next item in a row, which is going to be Councillor Schuster's motion, as is traditional.
I move we adjourn and go back to our regular scheduled work session.
All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand for the screen.
I'll second that, just
Yeah,
as a backup.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Following procedure is probably a good idea. All right. Any opposed? Same sign. All right. That motion carries. And that was the motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Schuster, City Clerk. You're probably more aware of that than I am. Thank you for helping me stay on procedural ground, Council. I do, especially on these special meetings and work sessions. It's like, okay, let's just hurry up and do it. Not always the best approach, is it? No, it isn't. Okay, let's open the work session for May 24th, 2022, which is going to be our work session surrounding the fee-for-service contracts and annual reports that we receive from our partners in those fee-for-service contracts. We'll go ahead and see if there's a public comment on non-agenda, non-work session items. See if there's a public comment on non-work session items before we get started. There is not. So we will close the public comment period and go back to the work session agenda. So I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about some of this. I think I had a little preview about some of this, which so one of these agencies at least, which I think probably most of you did, because there's been some things happening in their world. City Manager, I have you first up to sort of give us the introductory information background rundown.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mayor. As you know, you do have fee-for-service agreements with certain key strategic partner agencies in our community. Tonight, you'll be hearing the annual reports required under those fee-for-service agreements from two of those agencies, Laramie Chamber Business Alliance, with which the city contracts for economic development services, and then also from the Laramie Main Street Alliance, for which we contract for downtown support, economic development, historic preservation, and other services. I'm not sure who plans to go first, which of the agencies, but I'll let them fight it out. And while they do, I'll just mention that your third fee-for-service agency is the Laramie Regional Airport, and they'll be presenting to you late in June. And there are reasons for that scheduling issue that I don't probably need to go into now, but just to make sure you're aware, that third agency is preparing and scheduled to come and make their annual report as well. Following these reports tonight, I do expect we will put the fee-for-service agreements on the agenda in June, one of your June regular agendas for renewal. And at that time, you would renew the agreement and also determine the amount of funding to go to each of these partner agencies. So with that, if you don't have questions for me, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, and to our agencies for their annual update.
Thank you, City Manager. Appreciate the background on that. Let's see, on the agenda, we don't really have, well, I suppose if we follow the order of the agenda and who's listed, it's the Chamber Business Alliance up first. So we'll go ahead and welcome Mr. Enzi. Thank you for being here. Director Sherwood, thank you for being here. We see you're on there too. Mr. Enzi from our Chamber Business Alliance, good to see you. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off with whatever you wanted to present for us this evening.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me. I look forward to the time every year where we get to sit down and kind of do a recap of what's been going on economically in town, what's coming up, and kind of the programmatic changes that programmatic successes and then programmatic changes to the organization. I was late getting into the clerk or PowerPoint because we've had so many businesses visiting this week. We've already hosted 3 businesses, 2 new and 1 expansion. So things are still humming along in that regard. From an overview standpoint, since we last did an update, now I can't even get the one I'm working off of to go forward. This is awesome. We've had a very successful year. We've gone from, we've added right around 150 jobs over the last year with the different pieces in direct sponsored programs that we partnered with the city on. Those include High-Vis, Tungsten, Plenty, and the UL projects continue to grow and add jobs in town. We continue to support both the Thrive plan and elements of that as it continues to kind of gain momentum coming back on. And we continue to support existing local businesses throughout not only town, but the entire county. So it's been a successful year all around. We continue to see kind of the rebound recovery from COVID. The major challenges remaining in that are still getting workforce back and filling jobs in town. So I don't know how to. Can you forward probably 2 slides? Yeah, so there's the workforce. I guess on the last one I missed that we continue to see increased both interest and utilization of the rail spur, which is just kind of a challenging project that we have. So the COVID grant and loan plan remains in place, although utilization, we don't have any. We haven't had any requests for quite some time. And it continues to be I don't know the right term. We don't have people not paying, so that's a good piece for that too. And then I think the other kind of overview of note is even though Wyotech isn't a program that either LCBA sponsored or the city sponsored, the state did partner with Wyotech. They continue to see growth, and they added about 90 jobs this year. So, and are going to see the 800 student threshold in their October class. So we can go to the next slide. As I said, the 3 main areas that we're working on right now and kind of continue to change, adapt and work to is workforce, how we get people back to work, remotivate, how we fill the jobs. I don't know that people aren't working. I think where they work has changed. The kind of the new landscape of what that looks like, that impacts everything from what types of facilities businesses are looking for to where their market is to how they reach that market. And then we continue to work on how we expand Laramie's reach, tapping new markets beyond our borders, such as one of the businesses we recruited last year, which is a medical supply company that just completed an acquisition and has been headquartered in the kind of accelerator portion of our building. So that continues to grow. Next slide. So one of the things that we're asked to do in our update every year is talk about how we met objectives from last year. We've continued to work to hit the Thrive objectives as we can. That's still been somewhat hampered, but the city manager's office has put on an intern. We have a survey ready to go out to businesses that's kind of evolved and adapted to what does post-COVID look like in addition to the it's designed to figure out what resources and how we connect businesses to those resources they need. We continue to work with businesses and the community stakeholders across the board in terms of LCCC University. And we continue to work with different industry groups and are starting to see some different things coalesce around different industries. One being the siting of Yumbana, which is a gluten-free specialty food and will be an allergen food bakery in the Laramie River Business Park. The details of that are getting finalized so that they can start construction yet this summer. We cited 5 new or expanding businesses in our accelerated offices, and we continue to enhance our partnership with ACTB, the tourism board, and how we bring in different events, how we help them, how they help us. And that's really Scott does a great job of working across not only with our organization, the county, the outlying towns, but also downtown and the Business Alliance. The roadblocks that we continue to encounter are housing continues to be an issue for business expansion and is a roadblock in how we can replace some jobs now in different companies and organizations in town. Project timelines continue to be a crunch. There's not really new news and not really anything that our 2 entities can do to impact that. That's largely impacted by global supply chain issues. And so that's one we're just trying to weather the storm and figure out any way to enhance. The commodity crunch has definitely put a large pinch on construction prices, not only for housing, but for commercial construction. And then what that decentralization of the industrial model workspace looks like. What is the next phase of officing going to look like? One meeting that I had this morning with a company looking to site, they don't know if they're going to keep with kind of a hub and spoke model where they've got pods in Phoenix, Chicago, San Francisco, and New York right now, or if they're going to come all under one roof, and they're trying to figure that out. So that'll be, I think, excuse me, with all businesses, it'll just be kind of an ongoing discussion of what that looks like. And then the infrastructure demands have proven to be a challenge this year, with one company not being able to site after they bought a lot or made a letter of commitment on a lot at Sierra Sky. There wasn't enough power available there to meet their needs in the short term. Next slide. In terms of just our general business ready part, this is essentially the same slide as last year. We're still working on the same elements, how we help UL continue to grow. All the businesses that we've partnered on bringing facilities have experienced growth and continue to. We continue to administer the COVID grant and loan program. We continue to recruit businesses. There's a lot of interest finding the right fits for town in terms of what we have and what we need. Continues to kind of be where the rubber meets the road on that. The Adams Street project has proven to be which is the building we moved to, the old Game and Fish, has proven to be a great asset. We only have 3 offices available in June for the balance of the year. So we filled up 10 offices with companies and have another company looking at doing a retrofit remodel potentially on the upstairs for their corporate headquarters. We continue to work with tourism, attracting businesses to the airport, and then how we move things from a saleable point to sustainable companies. As I mentioned earlier, over 150 jobs. We know of at least 30 jobs directly through our assistants, the other 90 jobs at Wyotech. And then we've really tried to enhance job placement and posting. So when we know of somebody looking for a certain role or has a certain role open, we try to make sure that those people are put in contact immediately. housing is not really fundamentally. I think we've made some good steps in terms of allowing more types of housing over the last year, but we haven't found the right. I haven't been able to locate the right developer to come in and really start to impact that. They're looking for a much larger scale tracts of housing to develop. And the businesses continue to choose to land in other places for a variety of reasons. But housing tends to be the most often heard, with infrastructure needs being a close second. So, next slide. This is essentially the same slide as last year. Not a lot of changes. We've generated a little bit more revenue, both through rents and through increased membership. We have 8 businesses active in relocation and 1 already committed to site. We just maintain that with 4 employees, which are 4 full-time employees, with 2 of us working the bulk of our hours on economic development. So, and we haven't added any additional managed economic development managed properties. Next slide. So really, I think, kind of in conclusion, just thank you to the council for, continuing to be engaged in economic development at really all the crucial levels. How do we make policy changes that impact housing? How do we have a livable, workable community? That continues to be one of my favorite parts. Is you point to things that we have in town and they go, oh no, we can see what a great place it is. That's not our hang up. So a lot of that goes to how we work as a community and how you administer as a council. Thanks to the council for allowing staff members to serve on committees and bring concerns to us and allow us to participate back and forth. And we really appreciate over the last year, Derek and Janine have spent a lot of time explaining housing in a context that our board can understand. That there's, and I think the most poignant one is there's no silver bullet. This is a journey, a marathon, not a sprint. So that helps, but so I appreciate that. Our request this year as an organization would be to continue our downward funding trend. So this last year we were at 50, or 70, we're queued to go to 50. So over the next biennium, it would be to go 50, then 30 in funding, and then take the last step down to 10 the following year. So we're able to meet that request that was put in front of us in 2018, 2019. With that, Mayor, I turn it back over to you and stand for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Enzi. We've got some questions. I have the Vice Mayor up first, so I'm going to go to Vice Mayor Pierce. Appreciate the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Did I hear you correctly saying that we had a opportunity for a new business up at Sierra Sky, and because of the lack of power from the WAPA station, we weren't able to secure that opportunity?
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Pierce, yes, that is correct. They were unable to decide on a timeline agreeable to the company, so we lost. That was privately funded too, with a purchase of land, which would have allowed us to finish out another section of Sierra Sky.
So, and maybe you can't answer this question, but it was my understanding that one of the reasons we even located there was because of the power and the WAPA power station being right there. So, and like I said, and maybe you can't explain this to me, but I don't understand the lack of power. I mean, I'm struggling to get it, unless they need it like so much. I just need and maybe you don't know the answer, but I'd appreciate anybody if they could explain that to me in simple terms, you know, because I'm not an expert in this field. I don't really get it much, but I'd like a little assistance in understanding. Seems how we spent all that time and money and energy, you know, 9 years ago. It's got to be there. It's got to be there because of the power, and then no power.
Not enough power. Yeah.
Ms.
Go ahead, Mr. Enzi. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Pierce. So this is going to be the entirely abbreviated how this works path as explained to me. So when we constructed that, we were told that there was in excess of 70 megawatts of available power at the WAPA substation. In the interim, people put in queue requests through Pacificor, Rocky Mountain Power's open access transmission tariff system, and that power gets absorbed. And so theirs was not maybe indicative of what power is available there, but it exceeded the amount of power that would be available there if every other one of those requests came to fruition. And so the upgrades that the company would have been required to pay were in the tens of millions of dollars, and consequently they cited they cited some in Pine Bluffs, and they'll cite some in Archer. The attraction for that particular company for us, though, goes to our desire to have the infrastructure backbone. So they are also a technology provider and have some cutting edge last mile solutions for high speed internet and other things that would also have cited there. But their quick up and running driver was to get some mining operation put in place. So the power was not there for that. We're still in discussions for headquartering that company in some fit or fashion in Laramie. We just are going to lose out. From a tax standpoint, I went to their opening in Pine Bluffs 2 weeks ago. Each one of the kind of fancy Capcom boxes values out at $7 million in real property. So for about every 10 megawatts, you're looking at 28 million in taxable assets. So those are high value tax structure for us.
So if I could keep on going, so do you see a potential solution in terms of a communication or something with Rocky Mountain Power, or what do we do? Because, you know, the intent was because of the power, and now we need to pivot at some point. So I'm curious if you have suggestions in that area.
So, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Pierce, the answer that I have is yes, we're in close contact with Rocky Mountain Power about how they enhance their transmission into town to provide redundancy, which is one thing we need so that they can pull transmission resources off of other parts of their grid. So those discussions stay ongoing. We also are we've already pivoted and met with two companies just today, actually, that have lower power needs, but fit kind of that desire of the technology park. So, you know, when we find an obstacle, we really just try to work around and retool to find the right companies to go there. I think two things play in our favor right now that are still going to require power. One is the School of Supercomputing. The School of Computing at the university has attracted a lot of other kind of high value technology sorts of jobs to the area. The second being the work that the legislature has done already on block and fintech. And instead of recruiting maybe the companies that mine, we recruit the companies that create the infrastructure for that industry. And so we're already active in recruiting those companies. But long term, we're going to need that power situation addressed, not only for growth of the Sirius Sky Park, but, you know, if we want to put another 1,000, 1,500 homes, that's a large draw in megawatts of power. And so our community's expansion is going to be limited by what power resource we have.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vice Mayor. Next, we've got Councilmember Harrington, and then I'll just go in order.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Brad, thanks for joining us. Always good to see you. And I guess off the top, thanks for the support for the activation of the space downtown from that COVID grant program. I think that will be significant in making a pretty cool space for the summer. So my question is about housing. That was your first roadblock, sort of the evergreen roadblock for the last several years. And this council is probably sick of hearing my personal stories as I struggle to find housing in town. But I am curious because I know you were on the emails for the housing action team that the city convened to really try to take a hard look at these things. And that group has largely diminished. But I had hoped, I think one of the roles that I had hoped you could play in that was really bringing the business community around to this idea that the city was actively working on it. And I was curious if you could give maybe an update on sort of the the council has made significant changes in the housing world in how we operate our zoning, our requirements, a wide variety of things. I feel like we might be approaching the limits of what a municipality can do to encourage housing in their town, short of building the housing themselves. So I guess one of the things I had hoped for was to see you at more of those meetings, just to be candid with you, speaking in support of some of these things, because I know that they matter to your organization. And then I'm curious if you can give me a sense. My question is if you can give me a sense of where the business community is at on those things, and if there's other things that we need to be doing as a city, if you have other ideas on ways that we can really start to move the needle on this housing problem, because I like you, identified it as the number one roadblock for our economic development efforts.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Harrington, one, I think members of my staff were copied on those. I have not been copied on every Housing Action Network. I have hosted members of the council or the city staff to come in and provide updates and do that. I'm always an email away. If you're feeling that I'm missing something, by all means, reach out directly to me and say, hey, I need you here. I'm working about 14-hour days usually. So, and trying to raise 2 kids. So happy to show up to anything. If you need me at something, feel free to reach out, Councillor Harrington. In terms of, I think we laid some good groundwork in terms of having the business community understand it. Remember that the business community, last year we provided a few letters via staff of different housing situations and places that we were encumbered in actually getting recruitment and replacing jobs. And I'm working with those businesses on a daily basis to try to fill those jobs because they're usually over $100,000 to $150,000 a year job. So they are aware and they understand a lot of the what can be done as a municipality. And I think the council's really stepped up in terms of creating some framework for that. One of the things that I hear from developers is time value of money. So if they look at coming through the Laramie process or coming through a different area, and our economic area is really the entire Front Range, they say, when am I going to be across the line and what objections am I going to run into? And, when they look at Laramie, they don't know. So I think some things we could look at in terms of, just next steps might be concurrent platting, concurrent final, preliminary and final platting might be an idea. And I don't think that anybody has thrown in an objection to that. I think it would just be a new, a new approach. But really, how streamlined, how consistent is our process? If you meet all of the barriers to housing, is your plat going to be approved? That's one thing that I hear. So in terms of, just another idea, the financial surety work that was done last year helped. That freed up a lot of people because they looked at Laramie as, I got to put up twice the money to do the same amount of work. So that went a long way as to, kind of freeing up the time value of money discussion for the developers. So those would be kind of my two right out of the gate ideas.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask another question or a follow-up?
Yes.
Thank you. And thanks for that, Brad. I do appreciate it, and I'll start learning about concurrent platting. I've heard it thrown around, but I don't know enough about it to have an opinion. I guess one of the things, so you mentioned that there was this this idea that you don't know what will happen when you engage with the city. And I have heard that, certainly that floats around. In my time on council, I'll say there are council members who have, far more experience than I do. I don't recall many plats that have been rejected that didn't have a deficiency, right? That didn't lack a finding or something of that sort. And so I guess maybe the question would be, how can we bridge that that gap in maybe perception and reality? And that would be something that I would be looking to you for, because you have sort of the trust of the business community. And I think that's a real value that you bring to this, is that those folks will follow your leadership on it. And I guess you and I can have that conversation some other time, but I would be interested in having it, because I do think that is, I've heard it, you've clearly heard it. So I think that is something we should be working on, because that's, that doesn't cost any of us any money. That's something we could do to really move the needle without spending. And it has, I think, a faster return as far as putting houses in the ground. I guess that wasn't a question, Mr. Mayor. Other than Brad, I will reach out to you.
I can answer the question.
Great.
If there are some stats as to what's come through that I could take to these developers, because I am out trying to recruit investment and development beyond here, and that's what they come back with. And I say, well, I don't think that's a problem, but if I just had, we had this many, and I can talk to Derek about it. I'm sure it's a stat that we could pull together pretty handily, but that's certainly it's that perception, Councillor Harrington. And that's what you fight in these investment battles. If the perception lies out there, people are driven, it's kind of like the stock market. People are often driven more by perception than reality.
Yeah, those numbers are easily available, Mr. Enzi. We'll get them for you. We'll get them for you. And I appreciate the comments about perception. There are a lot of, I think, frankly, perceptions about Laramie's business that are perception-based more than they are based in anything more tangible than that. I think it's been going on for a while. And I think we're going to have to start to get a little more aggressive about how we confront some of those things, because we can't afford to have that anymore, right? So if we can help the Chamber Alliance and the economic development partners with those things by providing more information about those questions that we encounter over and over again about, well, what about my plant getting, or what about this, or what about that, then we'll do it. We'll certainly do it. I want to just add a little comment there too. When the city council and the city staff, when we're talking about some of these changes that we make to zoning and some of these other adjustments that we've been working on with an eye towards trying to improve the pace of housing development, not everybody in town is always really happy with those things. And I think what would be great, and this isn't necessarily on Brad Enzi's shoulders, this is on our folks that are partners, at large within the Chamber Alliance, the businesses and those people that give us feedback and talk to us during these economic development plans and housing plans, for them to show up occasionally and support some of those moves would be good. Because I think it's one thing, again, perception, right? It's one thing to hear the council members say, we've seen these things and this is what we've heard and we've got to do this. And so we're going to do it. And we're sorry that you don't like it. It's another thing to have our partners there to say, yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that. Let me talk to you about the businesses that haven't come here and said housing is why. And I think, I think that's a whole community responsibility, public, private sector, individuals, to really talk about that, because I think the perception, to use that word again, is that, our housing situation really isn't that bad, especially by people who aren't actively engaged in trying to grow businesses in the city or grow other aspects of our city. Maybe it's not at the top of their list. Maybe they haven't been active in the housing market for 30 years, 25 years. I don't think they really understand what's going on. So anytime we can get some backup from our partners in the business community, frankly, we need it, right? We need it. But I'm not saying that that's all on Brad Enzi's shoulders. I'm just saying in general, that's part of this conversation when we do these annual check-ins with each other. So appreciate it. Appreciate it.
You're loud and clear. We'll try to rally some more troops as those discussions go on.
And there'll be some coming up. There'll be more, there's going to be more opportunity to do it. So we appreciate that. I think next up, I've got Councilmember Schmeckel.
I believe Councilmember O'Doherty had her hand up before I did.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty.
Thank you. Yeah, I just took it down so that I could get it out of the way. Thank you, Mr. Enzi, for your work and for reporting to us. But I want to state for the record that I'm relieved that a possible power-hungry business is not coming to Sierra Sky. My understanding is that one data center in Cheyenne uses something like 200 megawatts, which is more than the whole city of Cheyenne, which is something like 135 megawatts. This is just, I'm doing this from memory, so I'm not sure. So it doesn't surprise me that the 70 megawatts is not enough. And I feel like there's a real disconnect between our stated council goal of reducing carbon emissions in the city of Laramie and bringing in a place that uses more power than the whole city of Cheyenne. To me, that is not what we need to be doing in the 21st century. So I'm also relieved because I've read about a Bitcoin mining center in West Virginia that was billed as the salvation for the economy, and it's become a detriment because of fan noise. It's made it so the neighbors can't stand it. And I know that the data center in Cheyenne uses water for cooling. My husband was involved with that, but I just want to urge you, if we're bringing things like data mining and data centers that are going to be running fans and using so much electricity, I just feel like I would rather bring in sustainable businesses rather than businesses that are pushing us into using more power. So I just had to say that. That's to the whole council. I just need to get that out there. So, so what I was envisioning in what is literally my backyard is like things that are using our brains and computers, but not just using so much electricity. And it doesn't really create that many jobs. I can see the tax revenue, it sounds good, but I just want to caution everybody, I can't get too excited about Bitcoin mining and data mining, that kind of stuff that is going to increase our carbon emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. And Brad, I don't know that I think that's just sort of a general topic for everybody. I don't think that you've ever represented to us that you're exclusively trying to bring in data mining companies, but it probably does make sense to bring in companies that sort of are matching up with other city goals. And I think you folks have an eye towards that. So appreciate those comments. Up next, I have Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor, and hello again today, Brad. Good to see you earlier today. I'm the new kid on council, and this is an aspect of my other gig that I actually don't get to interact with, and that's the recruiting of companies to Laramie. Where are we deficient, aside from housing and, competitive free money, that really we don't want to go down that path? What are the executive teams that you're bringing here that don't choose Laramie? Why are they saying that? Are we missing amenities? Are we just competing with ridiculous places that we really have no shot of competing against? Are there things that would make your job in recruiting companies to Laramie easier if we had?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Schmeckel. I think, honestly, we don't miss very often. When we decide it's a fit and to proceed with on-site visit and get them here, we don't miss outside of there's not enough housing or we run into, that infrastructure need. It's beautiful to do my job when that's the case. I think some things that are starting to kind of take root, and that's been, in part to Impact 307 and efforts that the university's made, and just our, efforts that Trey's made downtown, is we kind of have this entrepreneurial, if you don't know somebody, you can knock on somebody's door and figure out how to do it, kind of networking, and that part is coming up. The next thing that will flow with that is access to capital. And that would be, everybody wants free money. I sat in on 2 meetings today. One, they wanted the Rolodex. The other one, they wanted the roll of bank. Just how much money are you going to give us? And some of those end up in kind of almost these tenuous threat sort of deals, like, if you don't give us a bunch, and I'm like, we're giving you everything we've got. This is our best shot, not only as an entity, but as a state. We're going to give you no corporate income tax, which, when somebody else says they're going to not have you pay corporate income tax for 5 years, and we're saying we're going to have you not do that in perpetuity, I don't know how the business math in some people's head goes. Well, it's a better deal to take 5 years than forever. It befuddles me sometimes, but I would say that next phase, Councillor, is really as we start to have, kind of a capital network that supports. I know that both through this at the state level and at the kind of banking level, the Smart Capital Network has stepped in some of those gap financing to make some banking deals work as companies move to bankability. And so the next round will really be, how do we go from that angel phase, which we have some activity in, into that venture phase where people are doing raises. And just this week, I've had 3 phone calls with companies that have gone through the venture process. So as more of those cite here, I think it will attract, it's really a momentum issue in that regard. But I think that's kind of the next phase of what we need, is that capital network that supports innovative and entrepreneurial growth.
Thank
Any
you.
follow-up?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that discussion. Next up is the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is not a question for Brad. It's mostly for Council in respect to Councilor Doherty's discussion. If Council chooses to lean in that regard, we or push a little harder, because we've kind of leaned in that regard, we may want to look at the zoning. So I think that's not necessarily a discussion for this evening, but certainly in the future, in terms of how we've zoned Sierra Sky.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think I want to add to that too. I think, Mr. Enzi, you took pains to mention that there might be some future opportunities with that same company, maybe in terms of more of their R&D side of things and things like that. I don't think we would mind being a host to some business innovation partners up there that we're trying to work on ways to make that less power consumptive and do some of those R&D things and some of those other sides of the business that you did mention. I don't want it to seem like, again, perception is reality. It's no secret to us that sometimes the Laramie City Council is described as anti-business. We laugh at that when we hear that. I think you know better than that. But I do want to acknowledge that you took some care to say there are other aspects of that business, right? And it would be great to have somebody come in and start working on ways to maybe make that more efficient, less power consumptive, so on. We did hear you. We did hear you when you said there were some other options for a partner like that. Certainly we'd be interested in something like that, But we do want our economic development efforts to match up with our public policy efforts that are supported by the citizens of this town. And you know that. You certainly know that, I know. Okay, I've got Councilmember Gabriel. I know you've been waiting for a bit. I have the city manager. I think, do you mind if we, okay, thank you. And then I'll come right to you. Thanks for your patience. City manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for letting me interject. When I hear infrastructure, I beg for more details. So Brad, I just wonder, I know you mentioned the power availability in certain places. I'm curious if you can give us a little more insight into infrastructure being an impediment, and if you're referring to private or public infrastructure. And of course, as your city manager, I'm keenly interested in municipal infrastructure.
Mr. Mayor, city manager, this one is the infrastructure hurdle that we had last year was purely power, which is not a city utility. It is not a city, but in light of how that kind of works in Wyoming, when you've got the service territory of a public utility, it unfortunately it rolls uphill towards you, and that sucks because it wasn't anything that we were aware of or really could have impacted upstream or downstream. We haven't run into anything in terms of like city-owned infrastructure being a gate beyond what we already knew in terms of, until we can run, if we had the magic wand, we would just put, infrastructure corridors everywhere. Well, guess what? It costs a ton of money, and that's not how it works. So, those are just challenges of city growth, which I know that the council and the manager's office have been diligently working on and tapping all resources to get towards. I would like to just kind of make a general comment. We're not working against kind of the carbon neutral objective in that. That was a company that came to us and was kind of gifted in our lap. And we have turned away most every miner to send them other directions. They had our goal as an organization has to really been recruit the infrastructure and the intellectual property, because those are the jobs that support that industry long term. And we've already seen the mining industry, so we would certainly talk to anybody. But what we want are the jobs that drive that long term, because honestly, industries like that are highly power consumptive are going to move to where power is cheap. So while you land them for a minute, you don't land them for a lifetime. So we want to continue. And that's really what the state legislation has built the infrastructure to do, is how do we maintain kind of that core intellectual property and backbone of infrastructure to support that industry. And that's really what we're looking for. They happen to have a mining aspect that went outside of their Internet of Things products and their intellectual property and actual service of that industry in terms of silicon chips, fixing miners, and keeping that up. And it would have been about 25 jobs locally in excess of $100,000.
I want to thank you for spending some time to go over that piece of that. Really appreciate that information. Really appreciate that information. And like I said, I think we have the understanding that the Chamber of Business Alliance, they know the community that they're in. They know the people that live here. They know the things that the people that live here are going to find important, and the type of economic growth we want to see. But it's good to hear these exchanges, I think, between the council and yourself as a representative of that organization, just to get on, to reiterate that we're on the same page on some of those things. So I appreciate you taking some extra time there. I really do. Thank you for doing that. Next up, I've got Councilmember Schuster.
Does Councilman Gabriel want to speak first?
Oh, he took his hand down. Councilmember Gabriel, that's right.
Yeah, I just took it down. Hey,
Right.
Brad, good to see you. Thanks for your presentation tonight. Talking about the housing situation, and this has been a very informative conversation. I was just curious, your input on what's going on in the northeastern part of the city, Indian Hills, with potential development. Council has approved some plats, and I know that, housing is going to take a while. it's all over the country and the development is going to be down the road. But do you have an opinion on what the developers are looking at in the city, especially in the northeastern part?
I don't, since that was kind of already done, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Gabriel, that was already in the planning process, kind of even before we started talking about housing as a deal. I know, to what I can intelligently comment on that, it's really the builders and the workforce to put the housing on the ground is, they're trying to line up instead of laying out a bunch of infrastructure. They want to put the infrastructure in and be able to sell the lot to somebody that's going to build on it, because it's really the door that we need at the end of the day, that actual place for people to live. And two things are impacting that right now: the extreme demand along the Front Range corridor for, local skilled craftsmen. It's competitive, and there's not a lot of kids going into the trades right now. So kind of that feed of that workforce has been lower than what they've seen. And the second thing is commodity pricing. A lot of these builders are having trouble controlling while lumber has come back down. PVC is still high, and just pick a day and you'll have a different commodity that's through the roof. And so how they're managing some of that is large bulk buys with one delivery. So we're going to need to really figure out how we get not only that developer, but that constructor, to the table for any like major number of door growth in any one development.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Yeah, I'm going to admit it out loud. Some of the concerns that I had about that big housing development coming on, boy, those are out the window in today's housing environment. Some of the community objections and discussions we had around that development are not. I now want to say it's a really good thing that was able to move forward, and under the platting that it was able to move forward under. Lesson learned there. I think we've got Councilmember Schuster up next.
Thank you. I agree with housing. It's been almost a crisis because we have been trying to recruit several instructors out there, and we have finally taken and purchased some modulars. And modulars don't always go exactly where they can, because in our town, some of our rules and regulations, so we have subleased part of a trailer court, which we feel is one of the higher end ones, and we're setting up 5 modulars just to try to attract more instructors for us, because that's how desperate we are. We've talked to several times the real estate companies, and as little as 5 or less homes are for sale inside of this community. So one of the other things I feel is we're short contractors. Contractors say it's tough to build anywhere, but it's tough to build in Laramie. So we have this plot north of town, which we're trying to supply water and sewer to, because we had to stop all building permits until our sewer was improved on Reynolds. It's now improved 3/4 of the way, and we have one more sewer project going this year, which will really open it up to a large amount of houses. So, I don't even know if I have a question or a comment, but I'm just scared of finding enough contractors that want to build here. There's building all over the nation. You can go anywhere and build houses, and they'll welcome you. So, do you see that as the biggest problem too, is finding enough contractors to build housing? Because right now they say that we're like 2,000 houses behind in Laramie.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Schuster, yeah, the contractor crisis is, it all just adds. This is something since 2015 we as a community have been looking at, and COVID impacted it, and we got a lot of people who were able to change their work environment and join our community, which is great. Then you had the Texas power situation, which shut down several PVC plants. There's an international trade that impacts it, both with Canada and China. And then you get right down to, if all those things went away, it's still bodies and hammers, and the skill to put them together. And so that's something that I don't know that I have an answer to, or that we could point to some things that we could do as council and say, here's a way we can solve it. But that's going to be, just how people get involved in the trades, and we restaff that element of really our nation is going to be a challenge, because it's really bodies and skills.
It's time to work with Laramie County Community College to bring back the construction technology program that they used to have up there. Expand that. Councillor Harrington's been waiting for another question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Just maybe to plant a seed, Brad. You mentioned in the housing, I think it was Councillor Gabriel's question. You mentioned trying to organize, and I don't know that you are the one doing this, but trying to organize the bulk purchase of construction materials and really trying to streamline that process. And I'm just planting the seed that figuring out some best practices of how that happens could be valuable, I think, to our community more broadly. So maybe just as you're working through the process, if it is you that works through that, or if you happen to know someone working through that, I'd be interested to hear from them about ways that we could maybe utilize that in other ways. And I'm thinking specifically things like solar panel purchasing and beyond sort of construction materials in the more basic sense. I think some of those specialty sort of housing upgrades might be a nice, that seems like a pretty easy way for the city to get involved in something that could have a dramatic effect on Councillor Doherty's point earlier on our carbon neutral goals. So just ask and keep an ear out if that conversation moves forward.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Brad, Mr. Renzi here? We put you through the ringer, Brad, but what else is new, right? That never changes, and we always appreciate you're always game for it. And we appreciate you coming here to share information about what's been going on, how it's been going, the problems you're looking at, and what you're trying to do to deal with them. And we want to keep doing what we can to help you and work with you to help us and help the community with economic development efforts. It's been a good presentation. It's been a good conversation. We appreciate it. And yes, we do know we put you through the ringer, but like I said, we always have what else is new, and we appreciate you always being up for it. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And just a quick congratulations to Trey in downtown. Big national award is a big deal. So congratulations, Trey.
That was great. All right. Thanks a lot, Brad. We appreciate it. We'll follow up with you on some of these things, or feel free to follow up with us if you have one later. As always, we need to keep up the conversation, especially on this housing stuff. Thank you again. All right. We appreciate that for the discussion. I don't know if who's staying, who's going. Everybody's always welcome to stay. Next on our work session will be our next fee-for-service partner, which is going to be Laramie Main Street. I don't know if we have anything we need to do in between, so I think without delay, we'll just move on to our Laramie Main Street presentation. Of course, got the Laramie Main Street Director here with us, Director Sherwood. Thank you for being here. If you're ready to go, we're ready to go.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. I am pleased to be with you this evening to present our annual report and be part of the conversation, but also to thank my colleague Brad for the work that he does in economic development and mirror his concerns, your concerns about housing. And that's something that I'll talk about a little bit during my presentation as well in terms of what's going on with housing projects downtown. So if we could load the presentation, that would be great.
You know what? Just because I don't want it to be misconstrued, I should probably have opened that discussion by also congratulating you on your award for the Main Street organization. I particularly appreciate what you had to say about it being a community effort, but let it be known that the community effort would be nowhere near what it is today without your work. I think that's abundantly clear to everybody on this council. But we congratulate you and your staff, some of the staff people that have come and gone that we know worked very, very hard on some of the success with that program. And it's really great to see that. The video was really good. And thank you and congratulations. And you've got your slide up, and it's just my ADHD that doesn't let me say things like that when I should say them, and I have to go back and say, oh, by the way, congratulations on your really big deal award. But congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet.
But I will say again, it is our award. This is something that we share with the city council, the staff. It is a long-term strategy to revitalize the downtown, and we're not done. But yes, it is wonderful to be recognized at the national level for our work and best practices. So with that, let's jump into what we did in 2021. So next slide, please. So many of you, sorry. Thank you. Many of you are familiar with the organization and the district, but I will do a quick overview. So we are a nonprofit founded in 2005. We have 2.5 staff members, a very hardworking, engaged board with 4 specialized committees that are 100% driven by the community. And we work to preserve downtown Laramie while enhancing its economic and social vitality. Our services are free to anyone in the downtown district. So that includes property owners, businesses, or even employees or residents of the district. Last count, there was 3,500 individuals working downtown. And so our work supports the retention of those jobs. We have 290 locally owned businesses that from when we started in 2005, we've had 159 net new business gain to get us to this 290 number. And then since 2005, we had a net new job gain of 698 that adds to that workforce. And I will also talk about housing. There is roughly 95 to 100 residential units in the district, but that's something that we want to move the needle on. Next slide, please. Thank you. So any accredited Main Street program has to follow what's considered this 4-point approach. So there is approximately 1,200 communities across the United States that are fully accredited and use this. So this is where our holistic grassroots strategy comes from. So we use design as an economic development strategy. So those are physical improvements to the downtown, beautification, preservation, our public art, and keeping downtown clean, and a place that is comfortable and inviting to hang out and spend some time. We also focus on business services, and so offering assistance in accessing technical assistance or grants, market research. So we have an incredible entrepreneurial ecosystem in Laramie, and it's our job to have that mapped out and be connectors and listen to the needs of our businesses and then get them the resources they need to be successful. We also use events as economic development and campaigns to engage customers and bring them into the downtown, introduce them to new businesses, and increase those businesses' sales. And then the backbone of the organization really is people. So it's our volunteers, it's our partners, it's those who are helping us with fundraising and just making sure that we are a healthy organization. So our 4-point approach, again, gets us to this very holistic economic development strategy. Next slide, please. All right, then I'll get into the nitty gritty of 2021, slide, please. And this, so it, so at the end of every year, we as a staff like to regroup and sort of go through our accomplishments. So I'm just going to hit some of the high points from our staff's perspective. So yeah, slide number 5, please. Thank you. So this is the Cowboy Cash program. So this is the second year that we partnered with the University of Wyoming to do this. And we provided over 30,000 in Cowboy Cash and Farmers Market tokens to faculty, staff, and students at the University of Wyoming. We did that through the summer farmers market season as a way to leverage our partnership with UW and to enhance our entrepreneurial ecosystem while encouraging the UW community to shop local. So as businesses recover, so whether that's ag-based businesses or brick and mortar businesses, it was important to continue to provide community-led support in order to build a resilient local economy. So we did that through our Cowboy Cash program, and this is something that we did get recognized at the national level for our innovation around this strategy. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Bailey, our volunteer coordinator, her favorite accomplishment from last year was the creation of a paid internship program. So we partnered with the UW's Honors College we've had internship programs, but this is the first year we've actually been able to structure them in a way that students get credit and a stipend. And so we filled positions ranging from marketing, business engagement, event planning to sustainability. And so our interns really built our capacity and supported our economic development strategy. And then big thing is always working with the businesses and seeing our local mom and pops grow and expand. And so in 2021, we had 11 net new businesses open, creating 44 net new jobs. So coming out of a pandemic, we were happy to see those numbers continue to grow. Next slide, please. And this is absolutely reflection of the community coming out to support local. And so it's our job to engage and put out that message and make that ask, but the community blew us away in the amount of downtown gift certificates that were purchased and then circulated downtown. So this is a program that we manage with First Interstate Bank. And you can see that we hit almost 74,000. And that again is a reflection of our community's values in wanting to support our small locally owned businesses. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I feel like we're getting better at as the years go by is utilizing our events as economic development strategies. And so when you think about the farmers market, that is an entrepreneurial pipeline. That is a way to identify ag, craft, creative entrepreneurs who may be looking to grow to their own storefront or sell, say, through Big Hollow. And so the farmers market last year was the biggest we've ever had with 103 vendors. And so we reworked the job descriptions for those contract employees that support the farmers market to make sure that we're getting those vendors the same access to business services as the brick and mortar businesses in our downtown. So really excited to continue in those efforts, but also making connections for local businesses through which breweries come to Brewfest. Again, this year, more than ever before, we went from an average of 35 to hosting 42 local and regional breweries. Continuing to grow the pop-up art walk, working with local artists to help them learn how to display, market, sell, use e-commerce to be part of our creative economy. And we continue to engage both with those businesses, but also our local partners. And so you'll see there we started tracking number of civic engagements that we participate in, task force with our partners, but also doing a better job of tracking how many times we offer individual coaching sessions. So you'll see these numbers in the future reported out. Next slide, please. So as a place-based economic development organization, storytelling is very important to our work because it's reflective of who we are and our identity and our shared values. And so through our marketing, we're able to communicate what's happening downtown, what's happening with local businesses, what training resources and programs are available. And so, yeah, sometimes you see like these numbers here in terms of social media engagement, but know that we have one of the largest reaches in our community, both to the businesses and to our excuse me, and to our residents. So we're constantly telling that story of our business community and what's happening downtown, and we hope that you're following along with that narrative as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our 2021 return on investment. So every month we track the number of renovation projects, public improvement projects, new businesses coming and going, jobs created or lost, volunteer hours, and then again, number of one-on-one coaching sessions. We submit that to the Wyoming Main Street program that's housed under the Business Council, and then they compile that and give it back to us in terms of our annual return on investment. So that's sort of how these numbers come to be. You'll see that in compared to 2020, we had slightly lower number of renovation projects, but they had a higher value. We had an uptick in public improvement projects coming out of the pandemic. We had 10 new businesses in 2020, 11 in 2021, which again, you know, with the economy as is, I think is wonderful, you know, slow, steady growth. Same thing for jobs. And our volunteer hours were up. So people are coming out again and ready to re-engage with volunteer opportunities in the community. So all told, last year we saw just under $1 million in private and public investments downtown. And then the next slide is our 2005 to 2021 reinvestment. So you'll see that what has happened downtown, again, through public and private partnerships, the city's engagement included, is $26.5 million reinvested into our historic district, which is just fun to think about. So you'll see there the number of renovations, public improvement projects, new construction, the net business gain, net job gain, and then our number of volunteer hours. So again, this is something that we track to make sure that there is value to our work and that our partners, our investors, our donors are getting a good return on their investment with us, those donations. Next slide, please. Thank you. So all this being said, there are some amazing things happening downtown. So yes, we pivoted during the pandemic. We're seeing a slow uptick, steady uptick in our growth and business activities, but we're ready to, get back on kind of that pre-pandemic level in terms of projects and programming. So next slide, please. And as already has been mentioned, yes, we were recognized as a Great American Main Street. And again, this is something that we hold collectively with the community and will leverage to continue our work. So this is an amazing milestone, but it doesn't mean that we're done, and it doesn't mean that we're perfect, right? We're always growing. We're always listening to the community and the needs of the businesses as we structure our work. So we will be leveraging this recognition, working with local tourism and state tourism office to make sure that we get some heritage travelers into our business community this summer, and we will leverage it to diversify our fundraising strategies. So next, please. All right, Empress Apartments. And so Main Street is taking on the role of developer in this realm. So above Big Hollow, there's space for 3 apartments. They're 2-bedroom each. I'm just giddy about this. About 10% of Main Street programs within the National Main Street Network take on this work. Owning property, fulfilling the role of a developer, and addressing these needs head on. So I had the pleasure of presenting this project at the National Main Street Conference. And again, it was something that we were recognized in our GAMSA application. If any of you are interested, I'm happy to do a tour and a walkthrough. We're about 50% complete on the project. We have a waiting list of renters, and we hope to have the facility open late July, early August. We did have a delay with COVID. This is something that we wanted to do 2 years ago, but we sort of had to regroup, re-strategize before we're able to move forward. So this is one of what I hope will be many downtown housing initiatives that you see Main Street take on in the years to come. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, utilizing our farmers market as a pipeline for ag and creative-based businesses, that's something I'm really proud of, just enhancing the role that that event plays in the community. But also wanted to highlight, we recently hosted our first ever Laramie International Flavor Festival. This was supposed to be launched in March of 2020, delayed like everything else. But my favorite part about this, and again, that strategic community engagement, was that we reached out to the university international community. So anybody who has an international tie within the community with tied to UW or Laramie, we partnered them with local restaurants. And so we were able to encourage our international community to teach our restaurants how to make their favorite dishes. So things that their grandmother maybe made or that they miss. And so we kind of put this international spin on a traditional restaurant week, which is something that you see, all over the nation right now, but did it in a way that engaged a community that we usually didn't see downtown. We wanted them to feel like downtown was also part of their UW experience. It's part of their home, away from home. And our restaurants just reported some record numbers in terms of sales and new customers in the door. So this is something we're going to continue to strengthen that partnership with our international community. And this will become one of our annual events. Next slide, please. So I'm excited to talk to you about our ongoing work in partnership with the city, specifically the Parks Department, to activate and beautify our public spaces, also known as third spaces. So these are the areas that we saw a lot of traffic during the pandemic, with the desire of our community to socialize and eat outside. But we want to continue those efforts to provide the community places to gather. So between spring and summer of 2022, we will have invested almost $53,000 in downtown beautification projects. And so those range from working with the city to clean up this lot, to add a mural and lighting and move the Hollyhock Commons to this area close to the farmers market, but also activating the space on 2nd Street. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how this project turns out. And it's something our businesses, when we surveyed them, like, what do you need? What do you want to see more of? And I honestly thought the number one ask would be access to capital. But we heard a lot of businesses say, we want downtown to look nicer. So continue with those cleanup days, continue with the flower pots, planting trees, activating these spaces. And so we feel validated in this work, not only from members of our community, but from the request from the business community. Next slide, please. And then similar to the outreach efforts that we did when the light poles were updated. This was back when Dave Darragon was with us. We went door to door to the businesses to let them know, when the light pole in front of their business was going to be replaced, when their sidewalk was going to be, interrupted. We're taking a similar strategy in outreach on the 3rd Street water main replacement project. So I've been in communication with the city engineers to verify the schedule, get that out to the businesses on 3rd Street, understand, what that impact will look like. And we're going to do some really creative things like offer the construction crew downtown gift certificates. So on their lunch break, they can go and support our local restaurants while they're downtown working on this project. So we'll be looking at creative ways to engage consumers to make sure that our 3rd Street businesses don't get overlooked this summer while that construction is going on. Next slide, please. Okay, so last project here. And this one, like any amazing redevelopment project, will take many years. This very small but mighty approach to the Wild Theater. So we have owned this building since the fall of 2019. We've replaced the roof. We have done pre-development work to understand what it's going to take to revitalize this. But as with everything else, COVID did slow us down. We are in negotiations with interested tenants, but still working on our fundraising strategies to get this building back up and into the community as an asset. So stay tuned on progress on the YO. So that wraps up my projects, and my next slides are an overview of our budget. So next slide here. So just wanted to do a quick look back at our operational income for 2021. You'll see there that the PPP and CARES funds really carried us over, and that the city's fee-for-service made up about 28% of our budget. Our budget historically has ranged from 180 to 220,000 a year, our operational budget, and so this was a dip coming out of COVID. So we were pretty conservative with our income and expenses, so that we can still be with you here today. Next slide, please. All right, expenses here. So you can see that we, again, conservative with our expenses. We had budgeted to spend close to 171, and then came in at closer to 160. And so that we did have some funds carried over that you'll see reflected in this year's budget. Next slide, please. All right, so this is what we're working on here. So I should mention 2 years ago, we went from a budget that reflected the Wyoming Business Council's calendar year. So that was July to June, but we wanted to line this out on a calendar year to be more reflective of the income and expenses that we get for Brewfest, which was happening in June and July. So this is just a nice clean way to look at our budget for the year. The city's fee-for-service makes up 23.6% of our budget, so a slight reduction there. We are asking the University of Wyoming to step up their contribution slightly, and then you'll see through public donations and corporate sponsorships, we've been able to leverage the energy around GIMSA and our national recognition to kind of flex our offerings there in terms of fundraising strategies. And our events like Brewfest and Farmers Market continue to make up a big chunk of our income. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you'll see there the top line reflects payroll for staff. We have just recently added in a simple IRA. So now we are contributing to a retirement plan, which is really exciting. And then our rent, you'll see there is a steal. So yeah, shout out to Christine Ed Anderson for keeping that quite affordable for us in our downtown space. And then just a note that we have moved the expenses on the YO Theater out of our operational budget into a restricted account so that whatever we raise in private funds or grants is separate from our operational budget. So, and then you'll see we're still slightly under our historic averages in terms of being at that 220 level. Next slide, please. And then this is reflective of our restricted funds. So these are kept in a separate bank account so that we can report quickly to our granting agencies or our donors. In this, you'll see some of our investments from our HPAR endowment. And so you'll see that we plan over the next few years spend right under 125,000 in essentially physical improvement projects and beautification projects within the district. So that is an overview of our finances. I'm happy to go into any more details or to meet with you individually. Last slide is just, do you have any questions for me? And to thank you so much for your engagement and your support and our shared success.
All right. Thank you very much. Questions for Main Street? I'll get us started while people formulate their questions. Thank you for that presentation and going over it in all the detail. And yes, again, congratulations on what I think is a well-deserved and long in the making recognition for the stuff that's been going on in downtown Laramie. I want to just mention that I really liked the highlights and the way they were put together in that video that you shared with us. Talk about really featuring some of the best of downtown Laramie. Really great to see the evolution of the what I guess we call the Big Hollow building now, with everything that's coming there, and it's really great to see. I wonder if you might share a little bit with us what in your experiences have emerged as the most consistent barriers to success for businesses that come into downtown. As you yourself pointed out, Trey, not everything is, of course, a big success story. We've certainly seen some businesses that have come and gone, not been able to make it. Now, I want to add that we recognize it's a pretty challenging time for businesses in general, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which being labor, but all of the other problems that we're having. Obviously, businesses are feeling inflation just like individual consumers are. There's challenges with getting workers to stay. There's all the supply chain problems. We've seen a couple of downtown businesses come and go over the last couple of years. I just wonder if you might share with us if you see any kind of emerging consistency to barriers to success down there that maybe the city needs to be paying some more attention to, if we have a role in solving those. Maybe you want to mull that over a little bit too. That's fine, but if you have any at the top of mind, I think we'd like to hear about them.
So, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council, that is an excellent question. That might be a deep dive over coffee or tea, but I mean, so putting aside sort of the, workforce shortages, supply chain issues, inflation that we're seeing right now, I think the secret to the businesses that we've seen be successful and have been around for decades is their level of commitment, engagement, and community. Their willingness to collaborate with other businesses or other organizations, their willingness to open up and be vulnerable and say, I need help. Like, I need access to, accounting, or, to say like, hey, my window just got broken out and I need a bump in sales. And so that willingness to communicate what sometimes we feel is maybe an embarrassment or a shortcoming. And so whether they're communicating it to myself or a staff member, or, throughout the business network, I think those who are willing to, ask for help, share their success with others, lift up other businesses, and be really part of the community building, is where we've seen those growth. Think about Sugar Mouse and like how much Ruth has, grown and expanded her business over the last 5 years, and just her willingness to, again, like bare her heart, and you don't think about like as a leadership skill, as an entrepreneur, but it's part of the secret in the sauce. So, but I'll continue to think about that.
Well, it's really important for us to be able to get that feedback on the things that are problematic. And I have a follow-up, and then I've got other hands, but I'm going to ask this follow-up too. And again, if this isn't something that you feel prepared or have had enough time to think about to answer now, that's okay. The other thing that I'd be interested in is hearing about those regulatory burdens or an environment of regulatory uncertainty in terms of working with the city, like we touched on earlier this evening. Those are things that we need to hear about if and when they emerge as issues. I think that's important for us to hear so that we can take a look and see if there are things there that we can do that help us be more in alignment with our goals for downtown, our goals for our economic development plans, and things of that nature. So if you want to touch on that after you get some other questions from some other members, great. If you want to follow up later, great. I've got, I think, Councillor Schuster up and then Councillor Harrington. Councillor Schuster.
First off, congratulations. Great award for that. The other thing, about 3 years ago, I asked about the parking lot behind Big Hollow. Would love to see that updated with some landscaping and actually not become pothole parking lot, which a lot of people have asked me about. So is there any soon to happen anything on that parking lot back there?
So yes, Mr. Mayor, member of council, if I heard correctly, the question was about the parking lot behind Big Hollow. Is that correct?
Yes,
yes.
It is. Yes, it was.
Yep.
Okay, so that one has 4 different owners. So those are private lots. So pre-pandemic, Director Fieser and I were working on talking with those owners about if they wanted to do a collective beautification effort, that Main Street could go after some grants, raise some funds for landscaping and such. But at the end of the day, you just couldn't get all of the parties on board to move forward with that project. So it is on my wish list. But it is something that we do not own those lots. The city doesn't own those lots. So it really has to be those private owners willing to come to the table and think about, a holistic design that they could execute together.
Okay. I have a little bit of knowledge about that myself, having been a volunteer for the Big Hollow before and working with one of those owners to try to work on an arrangement and agreement for parking in the back lot there. But I think that maybe is an area, maybe another project to add to the growing list to see, what other ideas can be looked at back there. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Trey, congratulations. As everyone else has said, really well deserved. I was curious what barriers, maybe from a city point of view, do you see for redevelopment of housing on second floors downtown? That feels like a real sort of some of the conversations we had with Brad earlier about housing. I suspect maybe more specific things would need to change for the downtown district, and I'm curious. We've waded into that a little bit as a council, but not in any only in a sort of parking way. But I'm curious if you have any other thoughts on that.
So yes, Mayor Weaver and Councilman Harrington. So I guess there's a few things. One is going back to the infrastructure. So the infrastructure exists for downtown. So therein lies a benefit to redevelopment because you're not having to build out your road or your sewer or your sidewalks. But if we want to incentivize property owners to put in fire suppression systems on those second floors, we need to make sure that the water capacity would meet that demand. And so that's something I'd be interested in working with the city to do and understanding which blocks would be ready to go, which blocks would we need to put in larger water lines to accommodate that public safety. But I also think there's just a lot of expertise in this area in terms of, our developers, our contractors who understand how to do infill or mixed use redevelopment or converting historic spaces into new uses. And so one of the ideas that we're bringing home from the National Main Street Conference is working with the Wyoming Business Council to create a small developer training program. So if you think about our developers as business owners and what they need as skills to fill this growing demand in terms of housing, I think this is an interesting idea of home growing our developers by offering them training programs to sort of take away these hurdles and these unknowns of what does it mean to go into a historic structure and to add housing. So that's something I'm interested to work on, both in Laramie and at a statewide level. But I think sometimes it's just those, like, I know where all those potential lots are downtown for infill. You know, my board members are aware. I know which second floors aren't being used. But I think it's something that we want to bring greater awareness around, the potential of, you know, going in and creatively reusing these spaces. And so I think there's a lack of awareness of the potential, but then the demand is really high. I don't know, again, follow up, like coffee, tea. I think this is something that, you know, we can regroup around in terms of, you know, what is downtown's role in filling our housing need in our community.
All right. Yeah, I think there's an understanding that a lot of these things that come up in these annual check-ins need follow-up, but it's also good for us to kind of percolate these ideas where we're all here together. You know, and there's a crossover, I think, obviously, between the Chamber Alliance's efforts, the downtown and the City Council. We're all kind of, you know, needing to overlap in these areas where it's appropriate, right? I mean, it seems to me that our downtown is, you know, maybe the center stone of the Gem City in some ways, at least to a certain type of person that might be considering coming here. They see that as a really, really great asset for this community, as I think most of us do. You constantly hear that feedback from people about, wow, this downtown is really interesting. You don't see these everywhere, those kinds of things. And it's just another thing where you can use as sort of a magnet for people.
Mm-hmm.
Got Councillor Schmeck.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, Trey, congratulations. It's been a lot of hard work. Please don't sell yourself and your team's efforts shorts for all the work you've done here, for the recognition here. I'm curious, just off the top of my head, if you're looking at the money that's coming in downtown to the community, and if we can look at the credit card transactions and see where the funds are originating from, what percentage is from outside of Laramie that gets spent here? Do we have a sense of that?
So, Mayor and members of council, I believe that is something that the retail coach could run for us. I don't know if they are still in contract with the city in terms of that. Was it Retail 360? So they were providing reports on both leakage, so like residents spending money outside of the community, but then also tracking through credit card sales and heat maps, like who was coming into the community to spend money. So I don't have access to that, but I think that's something I could work through our city manager's office to obtain.
Thank you. Other questions? Other questions? Thoughts or comments? Okay, well, plenty already. Got Councillor Gabriel. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Trey, we had a presentation yesterday at the Tourism Board on Jubilee Days, and I was just wondering if you have had conversations about any new things, any nuance for downtown during the upcoming celebration, because, you know, every year they have new people coming in and so on, but I was just curious what your conversations have been with the Jubilee Days people.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'd really like to twist this and put a nice bow on it, but I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that the communication and the coordination has not been great. It's something that Main Street has continued to offer their services and support of Jubilee Days activities downtown. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't stuck. It is an amazing event for our community. I love going to the rodeo. I love seeing all the activity downtown. But our businesses do have mixed feelings about it. They do feel strained. They don't always feel that the street closures are beneficial to them. All that being said, we're always looking for ways to leverage the traffic that's coming into our community, the district. I know the Laramie Public Art Coalition is working with Jubilee Days to do a mini mural project. And we are always gathering promotions from the businesses and putting together shopping guides so that those attendees to the events sort of know what's happening within the business community. But there could be greater collaboration among our two entities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
Okay. We've been sitting on a question or a comment or a congratulatory statement for the Main Street director so far. If not, I think we all.
I have one.
Okay. All right. Good.
I was just reminded with your picture of the downtown Laramie sign that when I was leaving dinner the other night, I saw all these people stopping to get their picture taken there. So I pulled over and did the same. And it's just joyful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I should absolutely give a shout out to Director Fieser because he helped me with the technical aspects of that project. Turns out I am not an electrician. And so he helped me quite a bit to execute that placemaking project.
Yeah, that's a cool sign down there. Lots of little features downtown. I think people like that. You know, the bike racks, we've got the murals, all the old antique clock that I think is a little bit of a neat feature, mostly because it was something I was nerding out about. But yeah, lots of good stuff down there. And you know, we look forward to the next project that's something we can collaborate on. And certainly, I think we've heard from you a real recognition about the challenges too. Housing, the overall economic environment, which probably isn't going to be permanent. I think it would be, nothing is, right? So we'll see how things are shaping up over the next couple of years and how that's affecting our efforts. But really appreciate this update. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up for you on these things, and I look forward to some more information, maybe some future discussions about what we need to do there. I'd invite you to consider, if you have time in your schedule, which I know is not a luxury that you necessarily have, to join us when we have some discussions around urban renewal tools that we're going to be looking at here in the near future as a council. That might be something for you to join us at, just so that we're all kind of getting some of the same information at the same time, if you can. And we'll stay in touch. You know what? I have to ask you a question before we wrap this up. And I can't remember off the top of my head, and I don't want to close the screen to go look at it. But with the other hat that you wear, Director Sherwood, are you on the corporations committee? I don't remember. Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Well, I want to follow up with you about something with regard to that's coming up in the very near future, which is their discussion around housing. That's coming up. As someone who has a good grasp of what's going on in this community, I think that's going to be important for all hands on deck. And I've invited Mr. Enzi to do the same thing. I don't have any other hands up coming up or any other questions coming up right now. So I think we're ready to close this portion of the work session. We want to thank you again, congratulate you again. This has been great. It's been good to hear from you and from Mr. Enzi and our other fee-for-service partners. We're going to have a presentation from the airport folks coming up very soon. So this has been good, and thank you very much. Okay. City manager, anything for us before I move on to the next portion of the work session?
No, Mayor, that's all. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, that takes us to city council updates and or comments. Council members, yes, Council Member Schuster, and then I'll go in order of hands. Council Member Schuster.
Thank you very much. Historical Railroad Depot had their big celebration last Friday. I attended and helped work the event from Double Dubs making national TV. When they did the interview with Guy, he came down to the railroad depot and we had trouble getting him out of the museum because he thought that place was just the coolest thing. And the director kept saying, come on, we got to go do this. We got to go shoot this. You can look at this later. So last Friday was the premiere of Diners and Dives. And we had a big event down there serving wings by Double Dubs. He made them all for everyone that would show up. And it was great, so we had that. The Territorial Park, I got you the calendar on that, so we haven't had another meeting since then. And that's all I have for tonight. And it was a great celebration, the people cheering when it came on TV, and everything was fantastic.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one update. I missed the LPAC meeting last week. And so I don't have an update for you on that, but I do have I double booked meetings is really what happened. So the other meeting that I did attend was I zoomed into a meeting between members of sort of like the climate policy groups over in Jackson, and our staff, Todd and Darren, had made the trip over. And I wanted to express my appreciation for them taking the time to go over and do that. I think it will, I think it will be beneficial for the city of Laramie in the long run to have some of those best practices that have been worked out by another city in sort of the same framework and the same sort of regulatory situation as we are, being in Wyoming. So I do think it was really beneficial, and I think it continues to be beneficial to work collaboratively on these efforts, figure out how to make them make economic sense as well as sort of climate sense, I think is an important piece of this. So I just wanted to update you all on that meeting and apologize for not having an LPAC update for you all as we enter summer and public art season. But I will get one for you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As most of you know, the Planning Commission didn't meet yesterday, and they have a meeting scheduled for our 5th Tuesday. It's going to be earlier than we start with our 5th Tuesday events, but it's going to be then. And then the Monolith Ranch Committee is basically, the ranch committee is how should I say, done with their suggestions and updates related to the lease. You know, our lease is coming due real soon, and bounced all that information back to city staff that are working on that, and that should probably be coming to council soonish. I don't know how soon, but it's on its way to us. So I'm going to say soon-ish, and that's it for me on updates.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll work. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Albany County Tourism Board met yesterday, and they had their best April ever in collecting for the tourism tax, and they're not quite sure why. Because usually April's kind of a so-so month, but anyway, their best ever April month, by the way. That's what I meant to say. So they're moving along. They have construction almost done, the renovation of 800 South 3rd, and they're going to be moving in next week. Gift shop will be open, and so that's going to be a nice feature for the tourists to come by on South 3rd. And we talked with a number of groups, including Jubilee Days, and they're trying to work out a way that maybe we can do some marketing for Jubilee Days through the tourism board, because a lot of those people don't have too much experience in that area, and maybe get some new things, new people involved in Jubilee Days. But it was a good meeting, lots of updates, and we've got a great board. And that is it.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Councilmember Schmuck.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Gabriel reminded me that there is a slight update here. The Laramie Beautification Committee has a venue change for its meeting here this coming Thursday. Due to the reconstruction there at the Tourism Board, they'll be convening at the Laramie Recreation Center from 4 to 5 o'clock Thursday, the 26th.
Thank you. Other updates or comments? Okay. Well, appreciate all the questions and dialogue for our fee-for-service partners. We've got another one coming up in another couple of weeks. So for now, in keeping with our agenda, we will. Actually, I think we have a missing spot for public comments that I need to call for, so I'll do that just to check. I don't believe we have any, so we'll close that. And I don't believe we have. City Clerk, do we have an agenda review, or is that waiting? I think we should, but I don't see a link for it.
It's 2 weeks till the next meeting, so when we have a fifth Tuesday, we don't normally have an agenda review because they don't have it ready yet.
You're correct about that, Councillor Schuster, although we do have an agenda that we had prepared. I didn't know if we were going to go over it tonight, but
Oh, there's not a drop-down link on it. That's why I kind of
like it. So that's okay. That's all right. Just checking to make sure I wasn't omitting something, and that's fine. I'm sure we'll all get a chance to look at that. So with that said, I think we're ready to conclude our work session. I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.